The steamboat lurched sideways with a grinding screech that sent passengers stumbling across the deck, and Louisa Thompson gripped the railing hard enough to feel splinters bite into her palms as the mighty Colorado River abandoned them on a sandbar in the middle of nowhere, Arizona territory. It was August of 1882, and the heat pressed down like a physical weight. Louisa had been traveling from San Francisco to Yuma, then planning to catch a stage to Gila Bend, where her aunt supposedly ran a boarding house. The river journey was meant to be the easy part of her travels, a peaceful float through the desert landscape before the dusty miles by coach. Instead, the boat had struck something beneath the murky water, probably debris from the spring floods that still littered the riverbed even now in late summer. And now, they sat at an awkward angle with water lapping at the lower deck. The captain, a weathered man with sun-damaged skin and tired eyes, emerged from the wheelhouse shouting orders that nobody seemed capable of following. Half the crew was drunk. Louisa had noticed that early on, and the other half seemed more interested in salvaging cargo than passengers. There were only 5 people aboard besides the crew, including Louisa, an elderly couple traveling to visit their son, a gambler who had spent the entire journey in the saloon, and a missionary bound for some distant outpost. "We are stuck fast," the captain announced unnecessarily. "The river is too low this time of year. We will need to wait for help or lighten the load considerably." "How long?" the missionary asked, his face already burning red from the sun. The captain shrugged. "Could be hours, could be days. We sent a man on the lifeboat downriver to Ehrenberg. They might send help." Louisa looked at the shoreline, perhaps 200 feet away. The water between the boat and land looked deceptively calm, but she knew the Colorado could be treacherous with hidden currents and drop-offs. Still, the boat was tilting more noticeably now, and she wondered if staying aboard was actually safer than trying to reach shore. "I would not recommend swimming," the captain said, as if reading her thoughts. "The current is stronger than it looks, and there are places where the bottom just falls away." So they waited. The sun climbed higher, turning the deck into a furnace. The elderly woman began to feel faint, and Louisa helped her into what little shade could be found. The gambler produced a flask and proceeded to make the situation worse by getting more drunk. Louisa rationed the water in her canteen, taking tiny sips and trying not to think about how long it might be before help arrived. Hours passed. The boat settled deeper into the sand, listing further to one side. Some of the cargo that had been stored below deck was now underwater, and Louisa watched crates and barrels float away downstream. Her trunk was somewhere down there too, containing everything she owned, all the carefully chosen dresses and books and small treasures she had brought with her to start this new life in Arizona. It was late afternoon when she saw the rider on the far shore. At first she thought the heat was playing tricks on her eyes, but then the figure became clearer. A man on horseback, sitting still as a statue, watching the stranded riverboat. He was too far away for her to make out his features, but something about the way he sat his horse spoke of confidence and capability. The captain saw him too and began waving his arms and shouting, but the wind carried his words away. The rider remained motionless for a long moment, then turned his horse and disappeared into the scrubby brush that lined the riverbank. "Coward," the gambler muttered. "Saw we needed help and rode away." But Louisa was not so sure. Something about the rider's posture had not suggested indifference. She kept watching the shore, hoping she was right. 20 minutes later, the rider returned, but now he was on foot, leading his horse to a stand of cottonwoods where he tied the reins. He was closer now, close enough that Louisa could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the typical outfit of a working cowboy, dusty trousers and a worn shirt, a hat that had seen better days. He stood at the water's edge, studying the situation, and then to her amazement, he began wading into the river. "Look," she called to the captain, pointing. Everyone on deck turned to watch as the cowboy moved steadily through the water. He was testing each step carefully, and Louisa realized he was finding the shallow path, the route where the sandbar extended from shore toward the boat. The water never got higher than his waist, though she could see the effort it took to move against the current. When he reached the boat, he grabbed the rope ladder that hung from the side and pulled himself up with easy strength. Water streamed from his clothes as he climbed over the railing, and for the first time, Louisa got a clear look at his face. He was younger than she had expected, probably not much past 25, with dark hair plastered to his head and eyes the color of worn denim. His jaw was strong and currently set with determination, and there was a scar along his left cheekbone that somehow made him more handsome rather than less. He looked at each passenger in turn, assessing, and when his gaze reached Louisa, it lingered for just a moment before he turned to the captain. "Name is Vincent Nash," he said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the sounds of water and wind. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles north of here. Saw you were in trouble." "We sent for help from Ehrenberg," the captain said defensively. "That is a good 20 miles downriver. Help will not get here until tomorrow at the earliest, and this boat is sinking." Vincent gestured at the obvious list of the deck. "You have got passengers who need to get to shore before dark. The water is too dangerous for them to cross. Not the way I came. There is a sandbar running most of the way. I can guide them across." Vincent turned back to the passengers. "I can only take one at a time, and we need to move now while there is still good light." The elderly woman began to cry with relief. Her husband gripped Vincent's hand and thanked him repeatedly. The missionary started gathering his belongings, but Vincent stopped him. "No baggage," he said firmly. "People only. The current is strong enough without extra weight." Louisa's heart sank as she thought of her trunk again, but she knew he was right. Survival mattered more than possessions. Vincent took the elderly woman first. She was light as a bird, and he lifted her easily into his arms. "Put your arms around my neck and do not let go," he instructed gently. "The water will be cold and the current will pull, but I have got you." Louisa watched from the railing as he made his way back to shore, moving slowly and deliberately, his footing sure even with the burden in his arms. He deposited the woman safely on dry land, spoke to her for a moment, probably telling her to wait, and then began the journey back. He made 3 more trips, taking the elderly man, then the missionary, then the gambler who was so drunk he nearly pulled both of them under at one point. Vincent managed to keep his balance and his temper, though Louisa saw the muscle jumping in his jaw when he finally got the gambler to shore. By the time he came back for her, the sun was getting low, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The boat had settled even further, and water was now creeping across the deck. Vincent climbed aboard one last time, breathing hard from the exertion, and looked at Louisa with those steady blue eyes. "You are the last one," he said. "Are you ready?" Louisa nodded, not trusting her voice. She had been holding herself together through sheer will, but now that rescue was at hand, she felt herself beginning to shake. It was not just fear of the crossing, though that was real enough. It was everything, the entire overwhelming day, the loss of her possessions, the uncertainty of what came next. "Hey," Vincent said softly, and his hand was suddenly warm on her shoulder. "I will not let anything happen to you, I promise." There was something in his voice, a certainty that made her believe him. She met his eyes and nodded again, and this time she managed to speak. "I trust you. He smiled then, just a small quirk of his mouth, but it transformed his entire face. Good. Now I am going to pick you up. Hold on tight, and if you get scared, close your eyes. But do not let go. Louisa felt his arms slide under her knees and behind her back, and then she was lifted off the deck as if she weighed nothing at all. She wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her side. He smelled like river water and horse and something else, something clean and masculine that made her acutely aware that she was in the arms of a stranger. Ready? He asked, and she nodded against his shoulder. The first step into the water was a shock. The river was cold, fed by mountain snow even in the heat of August, and Louisa gasped. Vincent's arms tightened around her. "I've got you," he said again, and began walking. The crossing seemed to take forever and no time at all. Louisa kept her eyes open, watching the shore grow closer, feeling the pull of the current that Vincent fought with every step. His breathing grew labored, and she could feel the strain in his muscles, but he never faltered, never stumbled. True to his word, he kept her safe. When they finally reached the shore, he did not put her down immediately. Instead, he carried her several feet up the bank, away from the water's edge, and only then did he slowly lower her to her feet. Louisa's legs felt shaky, and she might have fallen if his hands had not remained on her waist, steadying her. "Thank you," she said, and was mortified to feel tears starting in her eyes. "I do not know what we would have done if you had not come." "You are safe now," he said. "That is what matters." The other passengers gathered around, thanking Vincent profusely. He accepted their gratitude with quiet grace, but Louisa could see how tired he was, how the repeated crossings had taken their toll. His clothes were soaked through, and in the cooling evening air he had to be freezing. "My ranch is not far," he said. "You all can stay the night, get dried off and fed. Tomorrow we can figure out how to get you where you need to go." "We cannot impose," the missionary began, but the elderly woman cut him off. "Young man, we will be happy to accept your hospitality. My husband and I are too old for a night sleeping on the ground." Vincent's horse was well trained enough to tolerate 6 people walking alongside as he led them through the desert scrub. The sun set as they walked, and the temperature dropped quickly. Louisa hugged herself, shivering in her damp dress, and tried not to think about how far away any kind of warmth might be. She felt something heavy settle around her shoulders and looked up in surprise to find that Vincent had removed his shirt and draped it over her. He was now in just his undershirt, which was as wet as everything else. "You need this more than I do," he said before she could protest. The shirt was warm from his body and smelled like him. Louisa pulled it closer, grateful despite her embarrassment. "Thank you." They walked in silence for a while, and Louisa found herself watching Vincent from the corner of her eye. He moved with an easy confidence, clearly at home in this harsh landscape. She wondered about him, about what kind of man would risk himself repeatedly for strangers. "Why did you help us?" she asked quietly. "You could have just ridden on." He glanced at her, surprised by the question. "Because you needed help. What else would I do? Most people would not have gotten involved." "Then most people are wrong." He said it simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "My father taught me that if you have the ability to help someone, you have the responsibility to do it. Anything less is being a coward." "Your father sounds like a wise man." Vincent's expression grew distant. "He was. He died 3 years ago, cattle stampede. But I try to live the way he taught me." "I am sorry for your loss," Louisa said softly. "Me too." He was quiet for a moment, then seemed to shake off the melancholy. "What about you? What brings you to Arizona territory?" "I am going to Gila Bend to live with my aunt. She runs a boarding house there." My parents died last year, yellow fever, and I have been living with my brother in San Francisco, but his wife, well, she made it clear I was not welcome long term. I am sorry. That must have been hard. Louisa was surprised by the sympathy in his voice, by the fact that he seemed to genuinely care. It was. But I am hoping for a fresh start in Gila Bend. My aunt wrote that she could use help with the boarding house, and I thought it might be good to have a purpose again. Gila Bend is a good town, small but growing. You will like it there. You know it. I sell cattle there sometimes, and I pick up supplies. It is the closest town to my ranch. He paused, then added, which means you would not be too far away if you ever needed help with anything. There was something in his voice, a note of hopefulness, that made Louisa's heart beat a little faster. She told herself not to be foolish. He was just being kind, the same way he had been kind to all the passengers. There was no reason to think his interest in her was anything more than general concern. But when she glanced at him again, she found him looking at her with an expression that suggested his thoughts might not be entirely platonic. The ranch came into view just as full dark settled over the desert. It was a modest spread, a low adobe house with a barn and several outbuildings, corrals full of horses, and the dark shapes of cattle grazing in the distance. Warm light spilled from the windows of the house, and Louisa felt a wave of relief at the sight. A dog came running out to meet them, a blue heeler who circled the group excitedly until Vincent called him to heel. The dog obeyed but continued to wiggle with barely contained enthusiasm. "This is Sawyer," Vincent said. "He is friendly, just excited about visitors." A woman appeared in the doorway of the house, backlit by lamplight. "Vincent, is that you? Where have you been? Supper was ready an hour ago and I had started to worry." "Sorry, Maria. I ran into some folks who needed help." As they got closer, Louisa could see that Maria was middle-aged, with gray streaking through her dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "We have got 5 guests who need a place to stay tonight." Maria did not even blink. "Of course. Come in, come in. You all look half frozen. I will get some coffee on and heat up the stew." The inside of the house was warm and welcoming, with thick adobe walls and simple but comfortable furnishings. Maria immediately took charge, bustling about finding dry clothes for everyone, setting out towels, heating water for washing. Within an hour, they were all dry, warm, and fed, sitting around the large kitchen table with bowls of beef stew and thick slices of fresh bread. "Maria has been with us since I was a boy," Vincent explained. "She ran the household for my parents, and when my father died, she stayed on to help me keep this place running. I do not know what I would do without her." "You would starve, that is what," Maria said affectionately. "This boy can work from sunup to sundown without complaint, but he cannot cook to save his life." "I can cook," Vincent protested. "Beans and bacon do not count as cooking." Everyone laughed, and Louisa felt herself relaxing for the first time since the boat had run aground. There was something deeply peaceful about this place, about the easy warmth between Vincent and Maria, the solid comfort of the house, the sense of safety after a day of fear and uncertainty. After supper, Maria showed the elderly couple to a guest bedroom, set up the missionary in a small room that was usually used for storage, and made a pallet on the floor of the parlor for the gambler, who was by now snoring drunk. That left Louisa. "You can have my room," Vincent said. "I will sleep in the barn." "I cannot take your bed," Louisa protested. "I can sleep on the couch or something. You have had a hard day, you need a proper rest." His tone left no room for argument. "Besides, I have slept in the barn plenty of times. It is actually pretty comfortable." Louisa wanted to protest further, but the truth was that she was exhausted to her bones. The thought of a real bed was almost overwhelmingly appealing. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. I do not think I can ever repay your kindness." Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "You do not owe me anything, Louisa. I am just glad I was there when you needed help." He had used her first name without her permission, but somehow it did not feel presumptuous. It felt right, intimate in a way that should have alarmed her but instead sent a warm glow through her chest. Maria cleared her throat pointedly. "I will show you to the room, dear. Vincent, you go change into dry clothes before you catch your death." Louisa followed Maria down a short hallway to a bedroom that was clearly masculine but surprisingly neat. The bed was large and covered with a colorful quilt, and there was a small dresser and a chair with a few books stacked on it. The room smelled faintly of leather and the outdoors. "He is a good man," Maria said as she lit the lamp on the bedside table. "The best I have ever known. His father raised him right, and even after everything he has been through, he never got bitter or mean. He just works hard and helps people when he can." "Everything he has been through?" Louisa asked. Maria looked at her shrewdly. "That is his story to tell if he wants, but you should know that he does not make a habit of looking at women the way he looks at you. I have known him since he was knee-high, and I have never seen that particular expression on his face before." Louisa felt her cheeks heat. "We only just met." "Sometimes that is all it takes," Maria smiled. "Get some rest, dear. Things will look better in the morning." After Maria left, Louisa changed into the nightgown that had been provided, one of Maria's that was a bit too large but clean and soft. She climbed into Vincent's bed, surrounded by his scent, and found herself thinking about the man who had waded into a dangerous river to carry her to safety. She had come to Arizona territory looking for a fresh start, for purpose and independence. She had not been looking for romance, had not even considered it as a possibility. But now, lying in the bed of a cowboy she had met only hours ago, she felt something stirring in her heart that she had never experienced before. It was too soon to call it love, but it might be the beginning of it. Sleep came quickly despite her racing thoughts, pulled under by exhaustion and the deep sense of safety that came from being under Vincent Nash's roof. She woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Sunlight was streaming through the window, and she could hear voices from the kitchen. The low rumble of Vincent's voice mixed with Maria's higher tones and the chatter of the other passengers. For a moment, she let herself lie there, enjoying the comfort of the bed, the warmth of the morning sun, the simple pleasure of being alive and safe after yesterday's ordeal. Then she rose, dressed in her own clothes that Maria had washed and dried overnight, and made her way to the kitchen. Vincent was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, talking to the elderly man about something involving cattle. He looked up when Louisa entered, and his face brightened in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "Thank you again for giving up your room. The barn was fine. Sawyer kept me company." Breakfast was a cheerful affair, with Maria serving up enough food to feed an army. The elderly couple announced that they had decided to stay another day if it was not too much trouble, as the wife was still feeling poorly from yesterday's excitement. Vincent assured them it was no trouble at all. The missionary said he needed to get on his way, and Vincent offered to lend him a horse to ride to Ehrenberg where he could catch a stage. The gambler was nursing a terrible hangover and said little, just nodded gratefully when Vincent said he could have a ride to wherever he needed to go. "And you?" Vincent asked Louisa. "Gila Bend is about a 5-hour ride from here. I could take you today if you would like, or you are welcome to stay until you feel ready." Louisa knew she should go, should get to her aunt's house and start her new life. But the thought of leaving this place, of leaving Vincent, made her chest tighten with something that felt like regret. "I do not want to impose," she said. "You are not imposing." His eyes held hers. "I would like you to stay at least for another day. You have been through a lot and there is no rush." Maria made a sound that might have been approval or amusement. The elderly woman was watching them with open interest, a smile playing at her lips. "Then I will stay another day," Louisa said. "If you are certain it is no trouble." "I am certain." After breakfast, Vincent saddled horses for the missionary and the gambler and provided them with directions and water. He gave them provisions for the journey and refused any offer of payment, though the missionary pressed a small leather-bound Bible into his hands and made him promise to read it. Once they were gone, Vincent turned to Louisa. "Would you like to see the ranch? I need to check on the cattle and make some repairs to the east fence line, but you could come with me if you would like. The ride might be pleasant." "I would love to," Louisa said, perhaps too quickly. He grinned. "Let me saddle a horse for you. Do you ride?" "I used to when I was younger. It has been a few years, though." "It will come back to you. It is like anything else. Your body remembers even when your mind thinks it has forgotten." The horse he brought out for her was a pretty mare with a gentle eye, chestnut-colored with a white blaze down her face. "This is Honey," Vincent said. "She is the calmest horse I own. She will take care of you." He helped Louisa into the saddle, his hands steady on her waist, and showed her how to hold the reins properly. Then he mounted his own horse, a tall buckskin gelding, and they set out across the ranch land. The morning was beautiful in the way that only a desert morning can be. The air still cool from the night, the sky a deep, endless blue. The land rolled away in gentle swells, covered in sage and creosote, punctuated by stands of palo verde and mesquite. In the distance, the mountains rose up purple and hazy. "It is beautiful here," Louisa said. "I think so. Some people find the desert too harsh, too empty, but I have always loved it. There is something honest about this land. It does not pretend to be anything other than what it is." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Louisa found that her body did indeed remember how to move with the horse's gait. It felt good to be outdoors, to feel the sun on her face and the wind in her hair. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "How long have you had it?" "My father started it 20 years ago, right after the Civil War. He had been a soldier, fought for the Union, and when it was over, he just wanted peace and space. He met my mother in Texas, brought her out here, and they built this place from nothing. That must have taken incredible courage." "It did, and a lot of hard work. My mother died when I was 12, fever took her. My father never really recovered from losing her, but he kept working, kept building. When he died, I inherited everything. It is not a huge operation, maybe 300 head of cattle, a dozen horses, but it is mine. I know every inch of this land, every water source, every place where the cattle like to graze. It is home." There was pride in his voice and love, and Louisa understood. This ranch was more than property to him. It was legacy, family, identity. They reached the cattle, and Vincent sat for a while just watching them, counting to make sure they were all there, checking for any signs of illness or injury. Louisa watched him work, saw the ease and confidence in everything he did, and felt a growing admiration for this man who had rescued her from the river. "What about you?" he asked as they rode toward the fence line. "What did you do in San Francisco?" "Nothing very interesting. I helped my brother in his shop. He sells books. I read a lot, took care of the house. After my parents died, I just felt lost. I kept waiting for my life to start, for something to happen, but every day was the same. When my aunt wrote offering me a place here, it felt like a chance to actually live instead of just existing. I understand that. The feeling of being stuck, of watching life happen to other people while yours stands still. Did you ever feel that way? After my father died, yes. For a while, I just went through the motions, doing the work because it needed to be done but not really being present in my own life. Maria is the one who finally shook me out of it. She told me that grief was natural, but that my father would not want me to stop living. So I tried to find joy in the work again, to appreciate what I had instead of mourning what I had lost. That is good advice. She is a wise woman. He paused, then added quietly, "It helped, but there was still something missing. I just did not know what it was until yesterday." Louisa looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" Vincent met her eyes, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I mean that when I saw that riverboat stuck out there, when I waded out and climbed aboard and saw you standing there, I felt something click into place. Like a part of me I did not know was broken suddenly got fixed. Vincent, we only just met. I know. And I am not trying to rush you or make you uncomfortable. I just want you to know that what I feel is real. I have never believed in love at first sight, thought it was just something from stories, but now I am not so sure. All I know is that the thought of you leaving, of never seeing you again, makes me feel like I am about to lose something important before I even had a chance to understand what it was." Louisa's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Part of her wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that you could not fall in love with someone in a day. But another part, a deeper part, recognized the truth in his words because she felt it too. This connection, this pull toward him, was unlike anything she had experienced before. "I feel it too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." Vincent's face softened. "Why does it terrify you? Because what if it is not real? What if it is just gratitude and circumstance and desperation for something new? What if we are both just lonely people convincing ourselves that this means something? Is that what you think is happening?" Louisa was quiet for a long moment, examining her feelings honestly. Then she shook her head. "No, I think this is real, but that is almost more frightening." Vincent urged his horse closer until they were riding side by side, close enough that he could reach out and take her hand. His touch was warm and steady, grounding. "I am scared too," he admitted. "I have built a good life here, but it is a solitary one. The thought of opening myself up to someone, of caring that much and risking that kind of loss again, it is terrifying. But I think you are worth the risk, Louisa. I think maybe you were worth all the years of waiting, even if I did not know I was waiting for you." Tears pricked at Louisa's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with such raw honesty and vulnerability. Her brother had always been reserved, her parents affectionate but formal in their way. She had never been courted, had never even really considered marriage because no man had ever made her feel anything more than mild interest. But Vincent made her feel alive in a way she had never experienced. Just being near him made her aware of every sensation, every heartbeat, every breath. The world seemed more vivid, more real, when she looked at it through the lens of his presence. "I am supposed to go to my aunt's house," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "And you still can. Gila Bend is not far. You could work at the boarding house and I could come courting properly, bring you flowers and take you on buggy rides and do all the things a man is supposed to do when he is trying to win a woman's heart. Is that what you want to do? Win my heart?" Vincent brought his horse to a stop and Louisa did the same. He turned in the saddle to face her fully, and the look in his eyes was so intense it sent heat flooding through her entire body. "I want to win your heart," he said slowly, "and keep it for the rest of my life. I want to marry you and build a life with you here on this ranch. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you in my arms every night. I want to have children with you and grow old with you, and never spend another day feeling like something vital is missing from my life." "Vincent," she breathed. "I know it is too fast. I know I should court you properly and give you time to be sure. But I also know that life is short and uncertain, and when something feels this right, you should not let it slip away because of arbitrary rules about timing and propriety." He squeezed her hand gently. "So here is what I propose. Stay for a few more days. Get to know me better. Let me show you what life here would be like. If at the end of that time you want to go to your aunt's house, I will take you there and court you properly for as long as you need. But if you feel what I feel, if you think that maybe we could build something real together, then stay. Marry me and make this place your home." It was insane. It was reckless and impulsive and flew in the face of everything she had been taught about how relationships were supposed to work. She should say no, should insist on propriety and proper courtship and time to be sure of her feelings. But looking into Vincent's eyes, feeling the certainty that radiated from him, Louisa realized that she did not want to be careful or cautious. She had spent too many years waiting for her life to begin. This man, this beautiful, honest, courageous man, was offering her everything she had ever dreamed of and things she had not even known to dream about. "I will stay," she said, "for a few days, to see." The smile that broke across Vincent's face was like sunrise, brilliant and warm and full of promise. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture that was both old-fashioned and deeply romantic. "Thank you," he said. "I promise you will not regret it." They spent the rest of the day together, riding the fence line and making repairs where needed. Vincent taught her how to hammer in a new post properly, how to string barbed wire tight enough to hold but not so tight it would snap in the wind. He showed her the watering hole where the cattle came to drink, a natural spring that bubbled up clear and cold even in the heat of summer. He pointed out the plants that were edible and the ones that were poisonous, the tracks that belonged to deer and the ones left by coyotes. It was the most educational and enjoyable day Louisa could remember. Vincent was patient and funny, quick to laugh at himself when something went wrong, generous with his knowledge. He treated her as an equal, not a delicate flower to be protected from harsh reality. When she wanted to try something, he let her, offering guidance but not taking over. When she succeeded, he praised her genuinely. When she failed, he helped her understand what went wrong and encouraged her to try again. By the time they rode back to the ranch house, the sun was setting and Louisa felt happily exhausted. Her muscles ached from the unfamiliar exercise, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from useful work. Maria had supper ready, and they ate with the elderly couple who were feeling much better and full of plans for continuing their journey the next day. After the meal, Vincent played guitar while Maria sang old songs in Spanish, her voice still clear and beautiful despite her years. The elderly couple danced slowly in the parlor, holding each other with the ease of decades together, and Louisa felt a pang of longing for that kind of enduring love. When the song ended, Vincent set down his guitar and stood, offering his hand to Louisa. "May I have this dance?" There was no music, but it did not matter. They moved together slowly in the lamplight, and Louisa rested her head against Vincent's shoulder, feeling his arms around her, solid and sure. This was what she wanted, she realized. Not the grand adventures she had sometimes imagined, not excitement or novelty for their own sake, but this. Connection, partnership, love that was built on respect and shared values and the simple joy of being together. "I think I could be happy here," she whispered. She felt Vincent's arms tighten around her. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you are." That night, Louisa slept in Vincent's bed again, but this time the thought of him sleeping in the barn bothered her more. She lay awake for a long time, thinking about the man who had waded into a dangerous river to save her, who had opened his home without hesitation, who had offered her his heart with a courage that took her breath away. She thought about her aunt waiting in Gila Bend, about the life she had planned to build there. It had seemed like such a brave choice when she left San Francisco, striking out on her own to make her own way in the world. But now she wondered if maybe the braver choice was to grab hold of this unexpected love with both hands and trust that it was real. The next few days passed in a blur of happiness. The elderly couple departed with many thanks and promises to write. Maria watched Louisa and Vincent with knowing eyes but said nothing, just smiled and made sure they had plenty of excuses to spend time together. Vincent taught Louisa to rope a calf, laughing when she missed wildly on her first dozen attempts, but cheering when she finally caught one. They rode out to check on the cattle every morning, and he showed her how to identify the different animals, told her their histories and personalities as if they were old friends. He taught her to shoot, standing behind her with his arms around her to show her how to hold the rifle steady, and his nearness made her so flustered she could barely concentrate on the target. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their childhoods, their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets. Louisa told him about watching her parents die and being unable to help them, about the guilt she still carried. Vincent held her while she cried and told her that grief was love with nowhere to go, that the pain meant she had been lucky enough to have people worth mourning. He told her about his father's death, about finding him trampled in the south pasture, about the rage and helplessness he had felt. He told her about the year afterward when he had seriously considered selling the ranch and going somewhere else, starting over where nothing reminded him of his loss. But Maria had convinced him to stay, had reminded him that running from pain just meant carrying it with you to new places. "I am glad you stayed," Louisa said. They were sitting on the porch in the evening watching the stars come out. "If you had left, we never would have met. I am glad I stayed too. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be." On the 4th night, Vincent asked her to marry him properly. He did not have a ring, but he knelt in the dirt of the ranch yard and took her hands and asked if she would do him the honor of becoming his wife. Louisa did not hesitate. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He stood and kissed her then, their first kiss, and it was everything a first kiss should be. Gentle and sweet at first, then deepening into something more passionate as they both gave in to the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Louisa Thompson. I will love you until the day I die and probably beyond that too. I love you, Vincent Nash, and I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with you." They were married a week later in Gila Bend, in the small church with Louisa's aunt and Maria as witnesses. The preacher was a kind man who did not question the short courtship, just smiled and said that when you know, you know. Louisa wore a simple dress that Maria had helped her sew from fabric they bought at the general store, and Vincent wore a new suit that made him look unbearably handsome, even if he kept tugging at the collar uncomfortably. Louisa's aunt had been surprised by the sudden change in plans, but seemed pleased once she met Vincent. "He is a good man," she told Louisa privately. "And the way he looks at you, well, that is how a man should look at his bride. Your parents would have approved." The wedding was simple but beautiful, and when Vincent kissed her at the end of the ceremony, Louisa felt like her heart might burst with happiness. This was real. This was her life now. She was married to a man she loved beyond reason, a man who loved her just as fiercely in return. They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in Vincent's room that was now theirs. Maria had discreetly retired to her own quarters, giving them privacy, and Vincent carried Louisa over the threshold like they were in some romantic novel. "My wife," he said wonderingly. I get to call you my wife now, and I get to call you my husband. Louisa wound her arms around his neck. I like the sound of that. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that was both nervous and joyful. Vincent was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Louisa had been frightened, having only the vaguest idea of what to expect, but Vincent made it beautiful, made her feel desired and loved in a way she had never imagined possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Vincent traced patterns on her shoulder with his fingertips. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I have ever been in my entire life." "Good, because I plan to spend the rest of our lives making you even happier." "That is a bold promise." "I am a bold man." She could hear the smile in his voice. "After all, I married a woman I pulled out of a river after knowing her less than 2 weeks. Best decision you ever made, without question." The next months were a time of adjustment and joy. Louisa learned the rhythms of ranch life, the endless cycle of work that kept the place running. She learned to cook proper meals with Maria's patient instruction, to tend the garden, to preserve food for the winter. She learned to ride confidently, to help with the cattle when extra hands were needed, to keep the books and manage the business side of the ranch. But more than that, she learned what it meant to be part of a true partnership. Vincent never made her feel like she was just a wife in the traditional sense, someone to keep house and look pretty. He valued her opinions, asked for her input on decisions about the ranch, trusted her judgment. When she suggested they try raising chickens to supplement their income, he helped her build a coop. When she wanted to start a small orchard, he helped her dig the holes and plant the trees. Their love deepened as they learned each other's habits and quirks. Louisa discovered that Vincent sang to himself while he worked, usually old cowboy songs that were slightly off-key but endearing. Vincent learned that Louisa was grumpy in the mornings until she had coffee, and that she liked to read before bed, and that she had a habit of talking to the animals as if they could understand every word. They had their first fight 3 months after the wedding, a stupid argument about whether they should sell some of the cattle or keep them through the winter. It escalated in the way that fights do, with both of them saying things they did not mean, until finally Louisa burst into tears and Vincent, horrified, pulled her into his arms. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry. I do not want to fight with you." "I am sorry too. I do not know why I got so upset. Because you care. Because this ranch matters to you now, because you are invested in making it succeed. That is not a bad thing, Louisa. That is wonderful." They talked through their disagreement calmly, reaching a compromise, and then Vincent kissed her thoroughly enough to make her forget what they had been fighting about in the first place. "I love you even when you are angry," he said. "Especially when you are angry, actually. Your eyes get this flash in them that is incredibly attractive. You are ridiculous. You love me anyway." "I do," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Winter came to the Arizona desert, bringing cold nights and occasional snow that never lasted long. Louisa had expected to feel isolated, trapped on the ranch during the slower season, but instead she found it peaceful. She and Vincent spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, playing cards, making love and talking until late into the night. Maria taught her to knit, and Louisa made scarves and blankets, enjoying the meditative quality of the repetitive motions. Vincent carved small figurines from wood during the dark evenings, horses and cattle and desert animals that lined the shelves of their bedroom. In February, Louisa realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be sure, then told Vincent the news one evening after supper. "I think I am with child," she said. the words coming out in a nervous rush. Vincent froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Then he very carefully set it down and turned to her with an expression of wonder on his face. "Truly, I think so. I am fairly certain." He crossed the room in 2 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy about it?" "Happy," he laughed, and there were tears in his eyes. "Louisa, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful and about a dozen other things I do not have words for. We are going to be parents." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break, and Louisa felt tears of joy streaming down her own face. A baby. Their baby. A new life created from their love, a future full of possibility. The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Louisa was tired and sick for the first few months. Vincent hovered over her constantly, much to her amusement and occasional annoyance. He would not let her do anything he considered too strenuous, which apparently included most of her usual chores. Maria finally had to sit him down and explain that Louisa was pregnant, not made of glass, and that she needed to be allowed to live her life. "But what if something happens?" Vincent asked. "What if she gets hurt or the baby?" "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," Maria said firmly. "Louisa is healthy and strong. She will be fine. You need to trust her body to know what it is doing." Vincent tried to relax, though Louisa could tell it was difficult for him. His fear came from love, she knew, from having already lost so many people he cared about. The thought of losing her or the baby was more than he could bear. "I am not going anywhere," she reassured him one night, curled up against his side. "I promise." "You cannot promise that. Life does not work that way." "Then I promise that I will do everything in my power to stay with you for as long as possible, and I promise that our baby is going to be healthy and strong just like their father, or stubborn and beautiful like their mother." "I am not stubborn." Vincent laughed and kissed the top of her head. "Keep telling yourself that, my love." As her belly grew, Louisa found herself falling even more in love with Vincent. He was so tender with her, so attentive to her needs. He rubbed her aching back without being asked, brought her treats from town, read to her in the evenings when she was too tired to hold a book herself. He talked to her belly, telling their child stories about the ranch, about the family they would be part of, about how loved they already were. "I hope they have your eyes," Louisa said one evening, watching Vincent's face in the firelight. "I hope they have your smile," he replied. "I hope they have your courage. I hope they have your kindness." They could have gone on like that all night, each hoping the baby would inherit the best qualities of the other, but Maria interrupted to bring them tea and tell them they were both being silly. "The baby will be their own person," she said, "with their own qualities and quirks. You will love them no matter who they turn out to be." She was right, of course, but it was still fun to imagine, to dream about the future they were creating together. Louisa went into labor on a hot day in September, almost exactly a year after the riverboat had run aground and changed her life forever. The pains started in the early morning, and by noon they were coming regularly. Maria sent Vincent to fetch the midwife from Gila Bend, mostly to give him something to do so he would not drive everyone crazy with his pacing and worrying. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the afternoon and into the night. There were moments when Louisa thought she could not do it, when the pain was too much and she wanted to give up. But Maria held her hand and coached her through each contraction, and when Vincent returned with the midwife, he refused to leave her side despite the midwife's protests that childbirth was no place for a man. "This is my wife," Vincent said firmly, "and my child. I am staying." The midwife rolled her eyes but allowed it, and Louisa was grateful for his presence. When the pain was worst, she gripped his hand hard enough to leave bruises, and he never once complained, just murmured encouragement and told her how strong she was, how brave, how much he loved her. Finally, as dawn was breaking over the desert, their son was born. He came into the world with a furious cry, red-faced and perfect, and the midwife placed him on Louisa's chest while Vincent stared in open-mouthed wonder. "We have a son," Louisa whispered. "Vincent, we have a son. He is beautiful. You are beautiful. I cannot believe this is real." Their son had dark hair like his father and what looked like it would be blue eyes, though the midwife said it was too early to tell for sure. He had 10 fingers and 10 toes and a grip that was surprisingly strong when Vincent offered him a finger. "Hello, little one," Vincent said softly. "I am your father, and I am going to love you and protect you for as long as I live." They named him Thomas, after Vincent's father, with the middle name James after Louisa's father. Thomas James Nash, their son, their miracle, the physical embodiment of the love they shared. The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Thomas was a colicky baby who did not sleep well, and both Louisa and Vincent walked the floors with him for hours in the night. But even in their exhaustion, there was joy. The first time Thomas smiled at them, they both cried. The first time he laughed, they spent the next hour trying to make him do it again. Vincent was a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint, walking with Thomas when Louisa needed to sleep, singing to him the same songs he sang to the cattle. He built a cradle with his own hands, carved with intricate patterns of horses and desert plants. He was patient and gentle and utterly besotted with his son. "I never knew I could love someone this much," he said one night, watching Thomas sleep in his cradle. "I thought loving you was the most my heart could hold, but somehow there is room for him too." "Love multiplies," Louisa said. "It does not divide. The more people you love, the more capable of love you become." "Who told you that, Maria? She is very wise." "She is." Vincent pulled Louisa close, careful not to wake the baby. "Thank you for giving me this family, this life. I know I tell you all the time, but I do not think I can ever say it enough. You saved me, Louisa. When you walked onto that boat and ended up stranded when I waded out to carry you back, I thought I was saving you, but it turned out you were saving me." Louisa kissed him softly. "We saved each other." The years passed in a blur of work and love and the everyday miracles of family life. Thomas grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's curiosity and his mother's determination. He learned to walk by pulling himself up on the furniture, to talk by demanding to know the name of everything he saw, to ride by being placed on the back of patient old Honey, who was retired from hard work, but perfect for a small boy. When Thomas was 3, Louisa gave birth to their daughter, Elizabeth, called Ellie, who had her mother's auburn hair and her father's blue eyes. She was a calmer baby than Thomas had been, content to watch the world with solemn attention. Thomas was fascinated by his little sister, constantly wanting to hold her and show her his treasures. The ranch prospered. Vincent's hard work and Louisa's business sense proved to be a winning combination, and they were able to expand their herd and improve the property. They built a new barn and added rooms to the house to accommodate their growing family. Maria continued to be the backbone of the household, teaching the children with the same patience she had once shown Vincent. 2 years after Ellie was born, they had another son, William, who was the spitting image of Vincent and had a temperament to match his father's, steady and kind. Their family felt complete, 4 people who had been made from the love of 2, and Louisa sometimes had to pinch herself to believe it was all real. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Louisa back to the spot on the river where the boat had run aground. It had become something of a pilgrimage for them, visiting the place where their story had begun whenever they could spare the time. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I had ridden past that day?" Vincent asked, his arm around her waist. "If I had decided it was not my problem or that I could not help?" "I try not to think about it," Louisa said honestly. "It hurts too much to imagine a life without you. I think about it sometimes, not because I have regrets, but because it makes me grateful. That I saw you that day, that I decided to help, that you gave me a chance even though we were strangers. So many things could have gone differently, but they all went right." "Fate," Louisa said. "You believe in that?" "I believe that some people are meant to find each other. That there are connections that transcend logic and reason, bonds that are written in the stars or the soul or wherever such things are written." She turned to face him, cupping his cheek with her hand. "I believe I was always meant to find you, Vincent Nash. That riverboat running aground was not an accident. It was the universe pushing me toward the life I was supposed to have." Vincent kissed her then, deep and passionate, the same way he had kissed her on their wedding day and 1,000 times since. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you, Louisa. Every day for the rest of our lives, my love for you will grow, and mine for you." They stood there for a long time, holding each other by the river that had brought them together, and Louisa thought about how much her life had changed in 5 short years. She had been lost and alone, looking for purpose and a place to belong. And now she had everything she had ever wanted and more than she had dreamed possible. She had a husband who loved her with his whole heart, children who filled their days with laughter and chaos, a home that was truly hers, and a future that stretched out bright and promising. She had friends in town, a thriving ranch, and the respect of the community. She had Maria, who had become the mother figure she had lost. She had land and sky and the vast, beautiful desert that had once seemed harsh but now felt like freedom. But most of all, she had love. The kind of love that poets write about and dreamers yearn for. The kind that sustains you through hard times and makes good times even sweeter. The kind that starts with a choice to wade into dangerous water and carry someone to safety, and grows into a lifetime of choosing each other every single day. As they rode back to the ranch, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, Louisa thought about the young woman who had stood on that tilting riverboat deck, scared and uncertain about what the future held. If she could go back and tell that woman what was waiting for her, what amazing gift that stranded boat would bring, would she even believe it? Probably not. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming, the ones that sneak up on you when you are looking the other way. Sometimes you have to trust the current to carry you where you need to go, even if it seems like you are lost and drifting. Sometimes being stranded is really being found. They reached the ranch as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The house glowed with lamplight, and through the windows, Louisa could see Maria with the children, probably getting them ready for bed. This was home. This was family. This was everything that mattered. Vincent helped her down from her horse and pulled her into his arms one more time, holding her tight against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, a sound that had become as familiar and necessary as her own breathing. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "For what?" "For being stranded, for letting me carry you back, for staying, for loving me, for all of it." Louisa smiled against his chest. "Thank you for wading out into dangerous water to save a stranger, for being brave enough to speak your heart, for building this life with me, for all of it." They walked into the house together, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future would bring. The children ran to greet them, Thomas talking a mile a minute about something he had seen, Ellie showing off a drawing she had made, baby William toddling along behind his siblings with a huge smile. Maria was cooking something that smelled amazing, and the house was warm and full of life and love. This was what happily ever after looked like, Louisa realized. Not a fairy tale ending where everything was perfect and nothing ever went wrong, but a real life, full of work and struggle and occasional heartache, but also full of laughter and connection, and a love so deep it colored everything else. A life where two people chose each other every single day and built something beautiful together from nothing more than faith and effort and stubborn determination. Years continued to pass, marked by the growth of their children and the deepening of their love. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He learned everything Vincent could teach him about cattle and horses, about reading the land and the weather, about running a successful operation. He was patient like his father, kind like his mother, and everyone agreed he would make a fine rancher one day. Ellie was the scholar of the family, always with her nose in a book, asking questions that made even the adults think. She wanted to be a teacher, she announced at age 10, and wanted to open a school in Gila Bend so that all the children in the area could learn to read and write properly. Vincent and Louisa supported her dreams, even knowing it might mean she would not stay on the ranch forever. William was the adventurer, always climbing trees and exploring, bringing home injured animals that he was convinced he could nurse back to health. He talked about seeing the ocean one day, about traveling to distant cities, and while Louisa worried about him leaving, she also understood the need to see what was beyond the horizon. Vincent and Louisa grew older together, their hair gaining threads of silver, their faces showing the marks of years spent in the sun and wind. But Vincent still looked at Louisa the way he had that first day on the river, with wonder and love and absolute certainty. And Louisa still felt her heart skip when he walked into a room, still found excuses to touch him just to maintain that physical connection. They made love less frequently as the years passed, their bodies not as young and energetic as they once were. But what they lost in frequency, they gained in tenderness and familiarity. They knew each other's bodies as well as they knew the land they worked, every curve and hollow, every sensitive place, every way to bring pleasure and comfort. On their 20th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. Half the town of Gila Bend turned up, along with ranchers from surrounding spreads and friends from as far away as Phoenix. There was music and dancing and food enough to feed an army. Vincent and Louisa danced together as the sun set, moving slowly to a waltz, and Louisa rested her head on his shoulder just as she had that first night at the ranch. 20 years, Vincent mused. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I still dream about that riverboat, about seeing you wade out through the water. I wake up and have to remind myself that it was real, that all of this is real. Best day of my life finding you. Best day of mine being found. As the party continued around them, Vincent pulled Louisa closer and spoke directly into her ear. I want to grow old with you, Louisa Nash. I want 50 more anniversaries just like this one. I want to see our grandchildren grow up and maybe even meet our great-grandchildren. I want every single day I have left to be spent with you. You have me, Louisa promised. For all the days we are given, however many that turns out to be, you have me. And that was the truth of it, the foundation upon which their entire life together was built. They had each other. They had made promises by that river 20 years ago, had spoken vows in a small church in Gila Bend, had reaffirmed their commitment every day through actions and words, and the simple choice to stay. And they would keep choosing each other, keep building this life together, until their story reached its natural end. But that end was still far in the future. For now, they had this moment, this dance, this love that had started with a cowboy wading into dangerous water to rescue a stranded woman and had grown into something extraordinary. They had a ranch that thrived, children who were healthy and happy, a community that respected them and each other. They had everything that mattered, and it had all started because a riverboat had run aground and a cowboy had waded out and carried her back to shore. Such a simple act, born of basic human decency and courage, and it had changed everything. It had created a love story for the ages, the kind that would be remembered and retold, a testament to the power of choosing to help a stranger, of opening your heart even when it was scary, of trusting in love even when logic said it was too fast, too soon, too risky. Vincent and Louisa Nash had beaten the odds. They had built something real and lasting from the most unlikely beginning. And as they danced under the Arizona stars, surrounded by family and friends, they knew with absolute certainty that they would love each other until their very last breath and beyond. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and refused to let go. Their story had started in water and grown on solid ground. It had survived drought and hardship, joy and sorrow, the everyday challenges of building a life together. And it would continue, passed down through their children and grandchildren, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come when you are stranded and someone brave enough to wade into the current carries you home. This was their happily ever after, messy and real and absolutely perfect. And neither of them would change a single moment of it, from that first meeting on a tilted riverboat to this dance 20 years later, because every moment had led them here, to this place, to this love, to this life they had built together one day at a time with faith and effort, and an unshakable commitment to each other. The music ended and a new song began, but Vincent and Louisa kept dancing, lost in each other, and the memories of all the years behind them, and the anticipation of all the years still to come. And in that moment, surrounded by love in all its forms, they were completely, perfectly, contentedly happy.